Hey everybody, it's Marie Haynes here with the latest search news you can use. Thank you for joining me again today. There have been a number of announcements that Google made over the last couple of weeks that all on their own are not that big, but there's still some really good information that we can learn from these. Those of you who have been watching this for the last couple of months that I've been doing these videos, you probably noticed that this is a different location than I'm usually in. I'm actually working from my home office today as it's family day here in Ontario, and I think it's kind of silly I'm actually not with my family, but I will be as soon as I'm finished filming this video. So those of you who are in Ontario, happy family day. Hope you're able to enjoy it and not have to work too much. So let's talk about some of the things that Google has done. For the first time since I've been doing this newsletter, I actually don't have any obvious algorithm changes to report on. Now we know that Google does up to 3, even more algorithm changes a day, but the major ones are ones that we take note of. I had wondered if perhaps February 13th is some type of a quality update, as I see a number of clients that are either up or down in Google Analytics, but I think this might be related to changes to Google image search that happened on that day, and so we're going to talk about that in a minute. So let's go through, for those of you who are new to this, this is my newsletter. This version that you're seeing right here is free to anybody who wants to get it. You can find it at mariehaynes.com/newsletter. And the paid version has lots more tips that you can use for actually optimizing your site. But this free version will keep you up to date on everything really that Google announces and that you need to know. So the first thing is, in starting of July of 2018, Google's going to be marking all sites as not secure. You can see up here how I have this secure. Because I'm in incognito, you're not seeing the green padlock. But if you're an HTTP site, right now this non-secure, as you see right here, not secure, that only appears when people start to type information into a form. That's going to change in July of 2018. Some frequently asked questions about this. Number one, people often ask if people are going to get the red screen of death. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, where you go to click on a site and it says this site is not trusted. That's not going to happen as far as I understand with this update. It's just the notification in the browser bar. The other question that people often ask is whether this means that sites that are HTTP are going to get some sort of ranking demotion. So a few years ago, Google announced that HTTPS was actually a ranking signal. However, they've agreed that, or they've told us that it's a very, very small ranking signal, and none of that is going to change when this change happens in July. With that said, I think that a lot of users, they may navigate away from HTTP sites to some degree. I'm not too worried about it. I mean, I do think if you're starting a new site, you should be starting as HTTPS right from the beginning. Most sites probably should make a switch to HTTPS, but you have to be really careful because there are things that can happen. I'm probably getting into way too much information here, but I wrote a post a little while back about all of the things that I have seen happen go wrong when you switch to HTTPS. One of those things, and I don't have proof for this, but I've seen it time and time again, that it really looks like Google gives a new assessment of quality when a site switches to HTTPS. We just did a site review just recently for a site that had been seeing a decline ever since their HTTPS migration, and as far as we could see, everything was done correctly. But this site actually had some significant quality issues. And so I think that when they switched, it was like Google gave the site a new assessment, as if it was almost like a new site. And things that sort of got by in quality algorithms before were now being taken into account. So I'm not saying don't switch to HTTPS. I mean, if you have a good site and a legitimate brand, then it makes sense to do that. But you need to be careful in doing it. So let's talk about changes to Google image search. for some reason, a lot of site owners seem to be really upset about this, but from what I can see, it's actually good for site owners. It's not so good for people who like to steal images from Google image search, although really it's added a couple of clicks to your process to do this. So what's happened is, it used to be that in Google image search there was a button here. I know it's hard to see, but this button said view image, and you could see the image right in Google image search without having to go to the website itself. I tested a few, and this is an image from one page on my website, and when you click on it, you can see that it actually goes to my website as opposed to just showing in Google Images. And that's actually a good thing, because that should result in more traffic. Now, the quality of that traffic might not be great. If people are just looking at your images so they can steal them from you, they're not likely to stick around and buy your product or convert on your website. However, if you have a website that exists for ad revenue and you get paid for ad views, then this is something that might actually help. And you may want to spend some more time looking at optimization for image search. Let's see next. Oh, the other thing too, so Danny Sullivan, if you're not following Google Search Liaison on Twitter, it's something that you really should do. So this is an account that Danny Sullivan created so that he can sort of give Google announcements from this Twitter account. And I found that when he was talking about image search, there was a bit of confusion. A lot of people thought that this was going away. So this is image search, where you can go to images.google.com and drag an image. This is kind of egotistical of me, perhaps, to drag an image of myself, but I dragged an image of myself, and Google was able to determine, which pages from my site and from LinkedIn where this is used. This is sometimes, we'll use reverse image search like this in a way to sometimes do link building. It's a good way to do link building for clients. What you can do is you can drag your clients' images here and then see who's using them. And then you can write to those websites and say, hey, thanks for using my image. Could you maybe link to me at the same time? Depending on the industry you're in, sometimes that can result in some good links. Let's see here, Google AMP for email. This is quite interesting. If you're into AMP and you do a lot of email communication, it looks like you should be able to use the power of AMP right in your emails. This is a new thing, so it's something to look into. When AMP first came out, I was really not a fan of it. It's, in some cases it's complicated to implement. I ran some tests on one of my sites and my ad revenue went down. Granted, that was probably a couple of years ago now, and I need to do some more testing. But it really seems like Google is putting huge emphasis on AMP, and I would recommend, for most industries, it looks like it's worthwhile to make the jump to AMP as well. Lighthouse SEO. This is an interesting thing, and I didn't go into as much detail as I wanted to, but now from within DevTools, which you can get Command Option I, or if you're on a PC, Control Shift I, will open up it'll open up the DevTools, and now you can do an audit. You have to still get a Chrome extension called Lighthouse to do this, and it certainly doesn't take the place of doing an audit, in person manually, but there are lots of really good things that you can get from this audit. So definitely worth checking out if you're wanting to tune up your site. So this was something that made me kind of sad. The new Google Search Console beta, it used to have, when it first came out, those of us who had beta access had this section that was low interest but indexed. And this, for most sites, was almost like a list of all of the thin content on the site. And unfortunately, they removed that. And according to John Mueller, it's not coming back. Intelligent answers on Bing. This looks like it's sort of a form of featured snippets, but instead of taking the result from one website, they've actually taken results from multiple websites. And you can see here that they'll say, one answer might say yes, one answer might say no. I don't see this live yet. If you're getting a lot of search from Bing, then I think it's worthwhile to look into this. This is interesting. I saw this happening. I guess I was part of a test that Google was running a few months ago, but now people are seeing this search box so you do your search, you click on the result, and then if you come back to the search results, you'll see people also search for, and there's other keywords here. These are great for doing keyword research. So if in this example that Dan Sure gave us, he was looking for how to write a poem. I'm not sure what Dan's up to, but hey, Dan, I want to hear the poem. That should be good. Hopefully it's about SEO. And then when he clicked back to the search results, we could see these are things that are related. And so what I would do is if this was my website and I actually had a page on how to write a poem, then I would make sure that these are in there. I would make sure that rhyming poem is in this, and poems for kids. And if it's not in that article, that I have an article about that. So this is a good way to do some keyword research. This thing here didn't get a lot of publicity, AMP stories. I think that this is huge, and I think that this is going to be part of our job. If you're doing especially local SEO, I think you really need to pay attention to AMP stories. Now, when at first glance, it looks like AMP stories is kind of like a Snapchat thing, and I think a lot of brands are going to say, well, we're not really into this, but really it sounds quite good. So this is what tends to happen. Now, I actually couldn't find many of these, and unfortunately I don't have a screenshot, but I couldn't find many of these in the search results, but Google's page, which I linked to in the newsletter, actually shows some examples of big brands that are taking advantage of this. And so what it is let's say that I'm doing a search for a plumber near me. This is how I picture AMP stories working in the future. And this is a bit of information from the paid version of my newsletter, but we'll go ahead and talk about it here because I'm actually pretty excited about it. So let's say I was doing SEO for a plumber, and I could, let's say one of my major search terms was how to unclog a toilet. And I could actually create an AMP story for how to unclog a toilet. And this, I think, would have a good possibility of ranking well, especially on local searches. And so when people in my city are searching for how to unclog a toilet or maybe emergency plumber in my city, the AMP stories will appear right at the top of the search results on mobile. They might even do so on desktop as well. They were sort of hinting about that. And now the story is basically something I can swipe through that gives me step-by-step instructions, and I can make it so that the last instruction is, hey, if you need help with this, here's a recommended plumber in your area. And so I really think that businesses that are able to leverage AMP stories, they're going to be able to win some real estate high up in the search results, especially on mobile. And so that's something I think everybody should be looking into. This was an odd thing. Google was sending out notifications to sites that don't have a high quality favicon. I don't think I received any of these. I'm not sure what Google's up to there, but if you got one, then I guess it's good to comply. I'm pretty sure that having a high quality favicon is not a ranking factor. Those of you who aren't sure, the favicon is this little thing that's in front of your title tag on the browser bar. Yeah, so Google sent out notifications about that. We have a bunch of local SEO news. Apparently Google is now going to be notifying you of Q&A questions if somebody leaves one on your knowledge graph. Or your knowledge panel. You need to go into your Google My Business and make sure this is checked off. Now, mine were checked off. I'm not sure if that's the default or if I did that myself. With that said, so Mike Blumenthal wrote about this, and nobody in the comments section had actually received a notification of a Q&A. But later on, I'm not sure if this is in the free or the paid version, it actually turns out that somebody's done a study. This was from a comment on a Moz post that if you can answer your Q&A questions within 3 hours, it seems to have a ranking benefit. So that's kind of interesting. We talk a little bit about some tools. Google Data Studio looks really, really good. And this Amazon Poly WordPress plugin, it uses some artificial intelligence to read your blog posts. So perhaps I don't even have to do this video anymore. I don't know. I haven't tried it out. But it looks like an interesting way to create some content. We do talk about jobs in the newsletter. I want to tell you that I'm actually hiring. We have a fantastic team right now of 4 people, and what we do is mostly site website quality reviews. And if you want to learn how to do that, you do need to be local. It's not a remote position, but you can go to mariehaynes.com/jobs, and I would love to have you come work with me. We have a bunch of recommended reading, and not as much as other episodes, but still, we have a bunch of recommended reading, and there's a bunch of stuff that's in the paid version as well. So I am heading off for Family Day. My family and I are going out to do a bunch of things and have some dinner, I think. And tomorrow I'll be flying out to Austin. I don't know if any of you are going to be at PubCon Austin. This is my first time in Texas. So if you're going to be in PubCon Austin, I'd love for you to come up and say hi, especially if you're a newsletter member. Hope you have a great day, and I hope this has been helpful. Thanks.